Hey everybody, good afternoon. It's Friday. It's Lisa Sherman with Inside Out Institute, and I have the honor and privilege of interviewing an awesome guy named Charles Mcdonald, who I met on Facebook. He is the author of uh, Throne of Souls, which is a really cool, compelling book. We had a great conversation about it. We could probably talk for hours about it. But I'm excited for him to share his story with you and his inspiration for writing this 5-book series, which he has actually finished 3 and he's working on the 4th right now. So I'm going to introduce Charles, who's super cool. He is from Roanoke, Texas, and he lives there with his wife. So without further ado, I'm going to let him tell his story. So Charles, tell us about what inspired you to write your book series.
Sure. So the best way to describe it is I was kind of left wanting for something after I read the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan and many others. I mean, that's not the only series I've read. I've read quite a number of books in my life for nonfiction and fiction. And I was really wanting for something that was deeply substantial in content and delivery. And while I was able to find substantive material in delivery, I wasn't able to find that very much so in content. Authors always stayed in their lane, epic fantasy or sci-fi or romance or military fiction or whatever. And never the two shall meet, right? It's just, that's it. That's all they're going to write about. They're going to write about their one world and they're going to develop that one world, and that's all there is to it. And that became pretty shallow for me. I did not see, outside of Valerian and some other things like Dune, a multi-world story that was multifaceted. So, for example, in Dune, you have, these different worlds and they're all developed, but they're all co-developed with this kind of commonality to them. And in Valerian, it's kind of the same way. So I didn't see anybody breaking the rules, right? I saw a lot of people that were hamstrung by the establishment, and let's just put it bluntly, publishers are gatekeepers, right? That's who and what they are. Let's call them what they are. They're gatekeepers. And so this series is a giant middle finger to the establishment. And I wanted to write something for me, right? Intellectually stimulating, thought-provoking, from the heart, powerful, compelling, and a big, big fuck you to the establishment.
I love that. You gotta love him. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And I think these days people are really, I don't like to use that word. I mean, I do use that word, trust me. But I think a lot of people are feeling like that right now. So that's perfect. It's like perfect timing. You almost have you actually do have perfect timing for this series. You really do. It's really cool. So you can, I'm sorry.
Well, like when you were talking to me the other day, just the two of us, and you talked about this is the time when people are turning inward. That was so brilliantly put, right? That's exactly right. And if you're going to turn inward, why not turn inward with something that's really going to make you think? And This is not the kind of series that you can sit down at a coffee table and expect to read it in an afternoon. That's not happening. Okay.
Right.
Just to get through the first book, it's going to take you some effort. So people ask me all the time, why did you make it so difficult? Right? There's a 1-star review on iTunes that says the word difficult. That's the title of the review. And I'm pretty proud of that, actually, because if you look at his or her, whoever wrote that review, they couldn't string together a coherent sentence in English. It was like,
Yeah.
what the hell are you trying to say? I mean, how about a period? How about a comma? How about, how about, what I mean? So this series wasn't written for somebody like that. I don't want to be rude, but it wasn't.
Right.
You can't read and write coherently in the English language. Don't even pick this up. It's not for you. This is going to test an intellectual person. Okay. If you've got 120 IQ, 110 IQ, this is going to test you. And I mean that sincerely, in that I want people to actually think. And if you don't have critical thinking capabilities, and you don't have the ability to set aside your lens of your upbringing and your belief system, which is a control system,
Yes.
a belief system is a way to control you, and you need to understand that. If you can't set that aside for however long it takes you to read this content, you're screwed. You'll never get out of this what you were intended to get.
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about this a lot in our Inside Out Institute. It's basically unlearning everything you've ever learned, the art of unlearning. So, no matter what age you are, I mean, especially when you get, I don't know how old you are. We never talked about that, but when you get to 55, you've had so many life experiences, you've been programmed per se, you're watching the news, you're just, everything's thrown at you, given to you, force fed to you. And there comes a time, and a lot of times, a lot of people don't awaken and realize what's going on until they go through an adversity. And that's kind of what happened with me. You go through a life-changing event, and it wakes you up to what's going on, and you become a different person. So your book is just like kind of just almost like a parallel to that. It's something that, like, you got inspired through a dream. So talk about that, and how that inspired you from something that from what you read, and now you're kind of going off of that, which is really cool.
Yeah, let's come back to that. You touched on three things I want to not let go just yet.
Okay.
One of them was media, one of them was experiences, and one of them was it's already escaped me, but I'll go back to it here in just a second. So experiences are stacked on top of our belief system. That's one thing, right? So everything that we experience in life is stacked one layer, on top of the other, on top of our belief system. And the belief system is the foundation. It's the concrete upon which we build our lives. So if that belief system is cracked or tested in a severe way, it's very threatening to us, right? It's very threatening to our being. But if your belief system can't handle a stress test, what does that say about your belief system?
Exactly.
So that's
doesn't say much.
Right. So that's one thing that I warn people about. Before you even start this series, if you have a rigid belief system, don't pick this up. This is not for you. You're not going to be able to handle this, because I'm going to test your belief system, and it's going to piss you off. But it's also going to make you think. So that's one thing. So you mentioned the media. So media is derived from the word medium, and medium is equivalent to witch and witchcraft. So it's very important. It's vitally important. If anybody takes anything away from this other than who I am, research that on your own. Just go look at that and understand that I am connected to people who would know that the CIA is a significant purchaser of media content delivery. Okay? They own people in the media. They pay for publishers and producers and actors, which we'll call journalists. Not all of them are actors, but many of them are. Jim Acosta, for example. They bought and paid for these people. Okay, Anderson Cooper. These people.
Everybody knows them. Yeah.
Right. Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So there are two essential elements that control the media. One is the deep state and one is the CIA, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. There are elements within the CIA that are a deep state, right? So
Right.
whenever you're watching the media, you need to understand that you are being programmed. And you
That's
need
why they call it programming.
Yes, correct. That's why they call it programming. And you need to be unplugged from that. We were talking privately, I think, where I described unplugging from the media and then plugging back into the media, and just for a test, right? I wanted to watch ABC News and just see if I could handle it for a few minutes.
Yeah, I remember you said that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember in the lead-in, the anchor said, dire consequences.
Yeah.
The second wave of coronavirus, dire consequences. Like,
Dire.
You know? And
Terrible.
I felt like, gnarled fingers of shadow kind of stabbing at my energy field, just
right.
into me to get me to believe that horseshit.
Yeah.
So you got to understand that is not helpful to you. It's not helpful to your immune system. It's not helpful to you as a spiritual being, and it's not helpful to you physically, because what is unresolved in the spirit is unresolved in the mind. What is unresolved in the mind is manifested as an illness in the body. So they're literally trying to make you sick, ill, by programming you with this shit. So,
yeah, exactly. I love that. That was perfectly put. I love that. Yeah. So it's so true.
Your question was the dream in 95.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. What is? I guess
that was your inspiration. That was basically your inspiration for the writing of. Yeah.
Right. So. I don't know if it came about as just, reading, hundreds of pages a day of The Wheel of Time or whatever it was, but I kind of went to sleep one night, and I used to have a folio by the side of my bed and an OU notebook, because I was still going to school at the time. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and thinking just this holy shit moment, and where things just kind of, if you've ever experienced deja vu, it's almost like the moment of the future colliding with the present, and the collision of those two energetic fields is just explosive. And I felt this kind of shockwave of curiosity go through me, and I started writing down just page after page after page after page after page, and what came out of that was essentially the core story of A Throne of Souls. What is the core story? So A Throne of Souls is it's an epic fantasy centralized story, in that a deeply, deeply, deeply flawed sorcerer, you could call him a sorcerer, you could call him a witch, you could call him a mage, by the name of Damon of Bazrit, later became known as Damon the Banished, later became known as the wielder of the Staff of the Invoker, and many other titles. He's got a dozen different titles. He experienced a profound loss and was profoundly manipulated to experience things in a certain way to bring about the end of creation.
Wow, deep.
Yes. And so, first of all, in my story, creation is not, just Genesis here on Earth, right? It's a 5+1 world story of man. So it makes several leaps and assumptions, like humanity did not originate here on Earth, that humanity was seeded here on Earth, and it was seeded elsewhere, and that there are many bipedal life forms that we would call human because they look human: 2 eyes, 2 arms, two arms, 2 legs, and a head. What's called the 5-star pattern, right? So that pattern is ubiquitous in nature, as I describe it in my series. And so the reason why there are 5 books is because there's 5 worlds, which is Perion, Setanon, Graylon, Kalion, which is the home world of Damon and many of the other major characters, and then Terran, Earth. And then the +1 is the world that Damon creates to be a safe haven for the end times to eclipse all of the other 5 worlds. So the intent is in the Throne of Souls is to show how a Throne of Souls came into being, and that happens in the 2nd book, Black Mirrors of the Soul. So think of A Kingdom Forgotten as this. It's like the blueprint for the entire series, and this is why it's probably the most complicated book to read, and it's a litmus test because it introduces you to the framework and the style of writing that is antithetical to the way publishing is done today. In other words, I took the publishing rule book and I just burned it, and then I pissed it. I mean, I did. I was sick of it. I was like, there's no way I could write this story under the rules that exist today. So I'm going to make my own rules, in much the way that George Lucas, made up his own, special effects organization, because the special effects for Star Wars didn't exist. He had to make it.
Right.
So
you need to be a pioneer in that, So
you don't do groundbreaking work by playing within the same framework that everybody else has played it within for decades, right? You make your own.
Exactly.
And so I did that, and there's, I think one reviewer said, I was horrified at the beginning of A Kingdom Forgotten to read the instruction manual on how to read the series. But
really?
That's kind of,
oh my gosh.
She went on and give you a 5-star review because she loved the content, because she said it was really great. So, but, it's that kind of, you're going to have to set aside everything you thought you ever knew to even be able to handle this.
I love that.
So A Kingdom Forgotten if the Kingdom Forgotten is the blueprint, then Black Mirrors of the Soul is kind of the context and the prequel, and it also advances the story forward as well. So it's a multifaceted, deep dive into the character development of a lot of the main characters. A lot of the knocks on A Kingdom Forgotten was that there wasn't enough character development. Okay, well, fine. Okay. I could have given you all the character development you could handle, but it would have been 500,000 pages, right?
Yeah.
So it ended up being 160,000 words as it was. And I didn't mean 500,000 pages, I meant 500,000 words. But that being said,
that would be a long book.
Yeah. So 160,000 words in digital format on, let's say a tablet, that's 600 digital pages. That's a gigantic book. So even with that, there was a lot of character development in it. It's just there wasn't a lot. There wasn't as much as I could have delivered. So in Black Mirrors of the Soul, I did like 185,000 words, and a lot of that was character development that I already had, in the pipeline. And then The Fall of Hate was, I think, 130,000 words, but that was more succinct, to the point. Here we go. Let's get deep into the story. Bang, 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 bang. And and it really goes to the heart and soul of the end times as described in the pantheon of the Throne of Souls. So one of the key concepts that I raise is, if there is an end times, okay, is that impactful of a society, what the Law of One calls a social memory complex, or is that indicative and affecting more than just one society, one world? And I think that there's a good argument to be made that it is quite possibly impactful outside of one social memory complex. So that's one of the storylines of the Throne of Souls. And then to go back to the core, which is, what is the Throne of Souls and how do we get here and how do we end with this?
Right.
the whole story from start to finish isn't about the making of a Throne of Souls, although contextually that is very important. It's about the unmaking of the Throne of Souls. And that journey of Damon and several other characters, Illyrian Starfire, Kellen the Destroyer, Evaniel, so many other characters, right? There's going to be a plethora of characters for you to get to know. The journey that they're going through is not just a personal, integral journey, but it's a journey of understanding of how the unmaking of a Throne of Souls impacts all of them.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. So are you currently working on the fourth out of the 5 right now? You're working on that one?
So right now I'm on my initial read through after writing the first draft. So the first draft was about 230,000 words, which is a big, big, big book.
Yeah.
But I'm around 250 pages, I think, into reading it all the way through. And so the way that I write stylistically is, let's say I'm going to write chapter 25 a day, the coming of the charlatan as an example. And I sit down and I think about, okay, context, this is what I'm writing about. This is the content that I'm going to write, boom, 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 boom. And then I'll blast it out. And then I'll start at the top of that chapter again in the same setting, go through it again. So it goes through 2 writes in one setting. And then I come back to it the next day. And before I move on to the next set of new content, I rewrite it a 3rd time. And
wow.
then as I'm going through the initial read through, it gets rewritten again. So as just as an example, let's say I rewrite or use alternate words or alternate phrasing for 10 to 15%. I think, on 230,000 words, that's like, almost 40,000 words that's being altered on the initial read through. But I do that for a lot of reasons, because the story is so complex and it has asynchronous development of time. So for those of you not familiar with block universe, let's see if I can show you. Okay, so you can see my whiteboard back there. I've got a block universe diagram over there, and I'll just briefly explain out of emergence theory, which comes from Garrett Lisi's E8 topology, what that means. Let's assume that now is much more fixed in rigidity than the future. Okay, so I'll do it like this. So,
I love this. I'm gonna love this. I'm like loving it already.
For the future, the further you go out in time in the future, the more malleable it is. But here's the thing that's really going to blow your mind. The more you go backwards in time, the more malleable it is.
That's cool.
You should listen to Nassim Haramein explain this, because it will blow your lid off.
Well, that just blows. I mean, that's probably blowing a lot of people's lids off right now, because that's something that I'm like, studying. I've been learning a lot about the future, the past, the present, the whole, so that just like, I know a lot of people can't relate to that, but that's really cool how you just put that right now. That's perfect.
Yeah. So if people are afraid of physics or biology or chemistry or math or any of that kind of stuff, don't be. I explain it in very, very plain terms as I go through it. And here's an example. There's a book by James Rollins, and I think it's called The Black Order, if I'm not mistaken. And that is a lot about the Glock. That's about the bell, a German project in the latter parts of World War II. And that has very profound physics in it. Okay. Regardless of which instantiation or story of the Glock you believe in. And the way that he explained it was I wouldn't say at a gnat's ass level of detail, but he went down into some pretty good detail, and I was able to get it pretty easily. And I know other people were able to grasp it as well. And I think that was written around a 7th grade level. I typically write on a, collegiate level. And then after editing, it goes down to 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that neighborhood, grade level.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is a publisher's nightmare, right?
Yeah.
You think Random House wants to deal with that shit? And they're like, no, man. No effing way are we going to touch that. So that's,
yeah.
But what I was getting at on the physics term is that I'm going to take you through Einstein and Newtonian and standard model physics and I
love that.
A lot of quantum mechanics and dual,
the quantum physics thing, I love that.
Yeah. Dual wave particle, that's kind of, that's going to get into it. But what I was essentially getting at is that we're going to go through things like the connected universe, emergence theory, and I talked about Garrett-Leacy's E8 topology, and that's a unified theory that's out there that has some significant merit to it that emergence theory is built on top of. But then there's another one that I'm still grappling with it myself, which is the geometric unity theory by Eric Weinstein. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. There is a, let's see, I think he made it public on April Fool's Day, 2020. And if you watch it, it will absolutely blow your mind. And so I don't want to try to explain it, but I would just say that there's.
I know it's hard sometimes for people like the lay person who really hasn't even heard of it. Are that almost takes a week to ingest into your head, and
it'll take you years. So this is really super deep stuff. But I would just say that what he's trying to get at, and what Garrett-Leacy are trying to get at, is how do we explain the fire that lights itself? Do you know what I mean by that?
No, what do you mean by that? Explain it to the viewers.
Okay, so the fire that lights itself, or if you want to look up there's an illustration out there called Drawing Hands, and this also describes that. But the fire that lights itself is an argument of which came first, matter or mind, or instead of mind, we use consciousness, right? Now, matter cannot create consciousness. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Matter cannot create consciousness. So I'm banging on my $3,000 desk that I made. This thing is never going to make itself conscious. Okay, it's never going to do that. It can't. If you want to debate me on that, feel free. That's fine. But what we know for a fact from dual wave particle behavior and from fluid dynamics and from other laboratory experiments and observational data, and this is not theory, this is observational fact, that consciousness can manifest matter. Okay, so if one came first, which one had to come first? Hello? Consciousness.
Yes, obviously.
And so now we're into John Wheeler territory, right? John Wheeler was a colleague of Einstein, and he described a model called the participatory universe. So if you were to take a U, right? I'll do it that way. If you were to take a U and just picture it like this, right? So a field goal. One end of the U is the birth of the universe, and the other end of the U is where it's at currently right now. So what you have is consciousness looking back in time, because time is malleable. All points in time are available and accessible in space-time, in the manifold. All points in time, past, present, and future. So it doesn't matter how far out we go. This could be now, or it could be 1 billion years from now, or it could be 100 billion years from now. It doesn't matter. Consciousness was looking backwards in time and birthed into being the universe that manifested itself. Let that blow.
Super cool.
Right?
Yeah, that totally did. But I'm in that realm a little bit. I know some people on here are probably going like, what? What's he talking about? Yeah.
Well, one of the questions that Einstein had was, could the universe have been created any other way other than the way it was created? That was a profound question that he never really
answered.
He was always grappling with that. And the answer, according to Wheeler, is no. It could never have existed any other way.
Right.
So there's all these in-theory scientists and theorists out there that talk about what banged, when it banged, how it banged, blah, 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 blah. Two membranes banging together, that kind of stuff. You can have all the bangs in history, and it doesn't, justify or explain how every single constant in the universe is precisely the way it needs to be to promulgate life. How is that? How the fuck does that happen?
Oh my gosh, that's what everyone's talking about right now. That's why it's like a collective thing. Like, it's perfect what you're talking about, because this is, even when talking to people on the street, even talking to friends, everybody's talking about this. Everybody's talking about the consciousness of the collective.
Correct.
And it's so cool that you're discussing this today with me, because it's something that's, I'm just enthralled with it. But I think that now, going through the COVID whole thing has made everybody so conscious.
Yes.
Everybody's waking up, and people are, I think that the news, the media, the presidential people, everybody that's in government, they're all nervous, because if 10% of us, you're the one who told me the other day, if only 10% of us wake up, do you know what's going to happen to the world?
Right.
It's going to be crazy cool. It's going to be awesome. It's going to change.
Right.
If 10% of the human population chooses to actually embrace what you're saying, it'll be crazy. It'll just be a whole different world.
Well, and one thing I want to be careful about is I'm not telling anybody anything necessarily.
No, I know.
Okay, I'm wrapping non-fictional content in a fictionalized love story, an epic fantasy story, and a sci-fi story, and a military fiction story. So all of these threads are coming together, and they're wrapping around a non-fiction story of creation and of what creation looked like on Earth, and specifically about the rise of hope. So we're talking about the book 4 here, The Rise of Hope. So I talked about each book has a planet that it's associated with. The Kingdom of Forgotten was primarily affiliated with Perion. Black Mirrors of the Soul was primarily affiliated with Kalion. The Fall of Hate was primarily affiliated with Greylon. The Rise of Hope is primarily about Earth. So for that reason, I had to take a lot of time off from the time that I finished The Fall of Hate to the time that I actually started writing The Rise of Hope was a significant amount of time. And I spent about 2.5 years researching, because unlike nonfiction, fiction has to make sense, right? Especially if you're going to wrap nonfiction truths, hard truths, with fictionalized content. And so one thing that I'm going to do is, yes, I'm going to tell you a story, but I'm also going to give you a lot of data points, more than 75 data points for you to go look at yourself in your own time. You look at it, you watch it, you read it, and you see what conclusions you come up with, because I bet it'll be something similar to what I came up with, which is how dangerous the deep state is, how dangerous the deep church is, and how there is a war going on, and we need to be mindful of what's going on, and we need to be cognizant of what is happening around us. And I'm just going to call it like it is. Coronavirus is a false flag. There. How's that? I said that. And
that's cool. No, I think, you know what?
I've got reason to believe that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who agree with you, more so than not. Yeah. The more people I talk to, the more people will agree with that.
And the reason why I say that is because whenever somebody of prominence comes out and says that, the mainstream media, whoosh, they jump in and attack that person and attack their credibility, bang, as hard as they can. And if there wasn't any truth there, they just let it slide, right? But because there is truth there, they attack that ferociously. You know, they are not going to let it stand. So understand you're being programmed to believe that the coronavirus is real. And I'm not saying the virus isn't real. I never said that. The virus is absolutely real. But is it a bioweapon, and was it intentionally released, right? And I'm saying yes and yes, it was. And that is that is where the mainstream media just loses their shit, right?
Well, that's the problem. Yeah, and a lot of people are saying exactly what you just said is what a lot of people are saying. And yes, the mainstream media wants to scare the crap out of everybody. I mean, it wants to keep us all in fear.
Correct.
So everybody's all in their houses and nobody knows why. I mean, yes, you can die. It's a virus. It's a flu. Yeah. People die from the flu all the time. People die from cancer all the time. Yeah. But why is this different? And how come all of a sudden, boom, the whole world is like affected by this? You know, there's so many theories. And then you say that to somebody, oh, it's a theory. Oh, it's, you know, there's a, oh, you believe that? You believe that theory, you know, that theory, you know, whatever that is, that conspiracy theory stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but come on. What is up with this? You know what I mean? Like, so I think a lot of people are feeling like what you just said. So it's perfect.
Well, when you start using the epithet of conspiracy theory, you know you've already won the argument, because that's the best that they've got, is to call you a name. That's the best that they've got. And meanwhile, I've got data points. So you want to go look at my data points? Fine.
Yeah.
I'll give them to you. Okay. But you know, there's no way on God's earth that this went through a normal organic transformation, you know, in a wet market in China, where patient zero was some, you know, bedridden man who walked 50 blocks to a wet market. Give me a fucking break. I mean,
exactly.
That's
exactly.
You can do. I mean, the magic word is the best that you can do. Warren Commission, come on. You know, there are some things where you just have to wake the fuck up and realize that you are being manipulated,
programmed, and manipulated. Yeah, I think a lot of people. And it's perfect. It's perfect timing for your book, because it's, you know, you're gonna be, you know, you're encompassing all of that. I mean, a Game of Thrones was kind of like, I mean, that was a cult thing. But what you're doing is taking that and like multiplying it times 100 and making it what's the word, relevant to now, which is perfect. And that's what people need, and that's what people want. And like you said before we came on live, you said people want to hear real, people want to hear truth, people don't want to be bullshitted anymore. You know, people want facts. You know, like you said, you have facts, you know, backing all your stuff. That's what people want. They want facts. They want to know. They want answers. So that's perfect. Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is going to be a thesis cited reference kind of thing, because you can't write fiction that way. But I do, in the credits section, list 75 references or more, and it's 75 and growing, that help me, you know, uncover the data that I am presenting in the non-fictionalized parts of the story. And some of that is fictionalized as I'm telling it, you know, for certain reasons. But some of it is clearly, you know, Charles trying to bring you into the here and now, right? And make it resonate with you by you know, look at it this way. If I've brought you into the here and now, which feels tangible to you, and then I show you something that's fantastic, then it makes the fantastic more believable, right? So that's kind of the secret sauce of how I do this.
Very cool. That's very cool. I have never met anybody like you. You're super cool. You really are. I love the way you put things. I love what's in your brain. It's like cool. And you're articulate when you talk. Like you and I talked for an hour the other day. We could have kept talking, but I had to let you go because we all have obligations and stuff to do. But yeah, that's so cool because I'm so into this whole metaphysical thing. And what we do in the Inside Out Institute is a part of it, is the emotion code, which I know you said you haven't delved into, but it's all metaphysical healing.
Yeah.
And it's all trapped energies, and we're all energy. So it's a really empowering thing to be able to help people getting away from medicine and not masking their symptoms, and getting help and being able to do it metaphysically is awesome. And it's something I got introduced to that I'm a believer. I've had sessions and I'm like almost healed from all my crap, my head crap.
And it's important that people, if you take anything away from this, take this away, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what you're being told on television by the programming that you're seeing, you need to go outside. Okay, you need to spend time in the sunlight every single day. Okay, if it's not going outside, get your ass outside. Breathe the fresh air. Let the sunlight spill over your energy body, over your light body, because that's who you really are. You're not this flat bag that's walking around. Your eternal body is a light body. It's a soul, and let the light of the sun spill over your light body and fill you with energy. Okay,
yes.
You are being depleted by being inside all the time.
That's exactly what they want. That's why we're all inside.
Yes.
So yes, and it's funny, we talk about that all the time when we do our coaching sessions. And one of the things that he said the other night was that to go outside. I mean, everybody's going outside. Everybody's walking now. There's no gyms. But if you really want to connect, take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground.
Yes.
And ground yourself. And I do that all the time. I always wonder why I want to have bare feet, and people laugh at me. I'm like, I want to be barefoot all the time. But that grounds you. It so grounds you when you're one with earth. Like, it's just, I know it sounds hokey, people think that, but it's very true. So
I'll back you up on that, and I'll say something very new agey. Okay. And people say, Jesus Christ, Charles, that is really new agey. But
go for it.
If you look at, so there are harmonic boundaries of the universe, okay? And that's one of the things I talk about in this book through an unpublished theory of my father called uniformity. And in it, he talks about 8 octaves, okay? And these are essentially harmonic boundaries of the membranes of the universe. So think about them like phases, okay? And
like chakras?
There you go. So the law of one describes them as densities, 1 through 7, and then intelligent infinity, right? So that's 8. And so the way that they talk about manifesting reality is by using the lower 3 chakras. First of all, you use the upper 3 chakras to
bring in light.
Isolate the probability, okay, I'm talking about quantum mechanics here, the probability of what it is that you want to make real, okay? So let's say there is a future you with a husband or a spouse or whatever, and you're picturing that, and you are picturing that life before you, and so you're using the upper 3 chakras to bring it in, isolate it, identify it, and then the lower 3 chakras to put emotion into it, because emotion is like the fuel, and then you're using your heart to broadcast it. And
yes, I love that.
So there was a study done in 92 or 93 with some heart surgeons and neurosurgeons where they identified that the heart has a neural network, just like the mind. Well, imagine that. Imagine.
That's totally true. That's totally true.
Imagine that. Why would the heart need a neural network? Okay. So you're using the heart to broadcast out into the universe the things that you want to manifest and make real. And I'll tell you for a fact, it works.
Yes, we talk about this in our emotion code sessions. It's called a broadcast message.
Yes.
So a lot of times you have a broadcast message that you're putting out that's negative,
Yes.
that you don't want.
Yes.
So you need to eliminate that and recreate a new broadcast message from your heart that gets put out into the world. And let me tell you something. I had a new one put in or whatever. Like I had a new broadcast message. And after that, things that were going on were crazy. I called him and I was like, or I texted him, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what's going on this whole week. And he was laughing. He was like, I knew it. I told you that's what it is. So what you just said was perfect in line with what we're doing, what I'm doing. And it's just so cool.
Think about,
I could talk to you for hours. We could sit and talk for hours. I really could.
Yeah, think about the control system in the media. One of the things that they want you to believe. Remember that dire consequences of the second.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to make fun of ABC, man, because they're just full of shit. So one of the things they're trying to make you believe is that you're a victim. Okay.
Right.
You are riding a torrential wave and you have no control over your future. None.
Exactly. Exactly.
A ride. Okay. And that is a fucking lie. And they know. And the last thing that they want is for you to realize that that is completely false. Here's a quote from William Casey, I believe, who was director of the CIA. And he said, go look this up. He said, we'll know when our PSYOP has succeeded when everything the public believes is false. End quote.
There you go. We could even end with that.
Yeah.
Charles, that was like kick ass. Like, I mean, honestly, that was perfect. That was just, because I think now, like I said, I love talking about your book, but I love the fact that you're so, how it incorporates with everything that's going on. And I just love that. That's why it was perfect that you were here. It was perfect that we met. We met on Facebook. Guys, Facebook, let me just say, you can meet so many incredible people, and it's so cool the connections that you can make. I'm so grateful to have made this connection with you. Because I could feel like, I feel like this, I feel connected. Like I could talk to you. It's weird, it's weird. And we don't really know each other that well, but to be able to talk to someone that's a complete stranger for a whole hour is a little, not the norm. So it's really cool.
Well, I think we talked about it where your energy announces who you are from great distances, right?
Yes, I agree.
And it announces who you are through the phone. It announces who you are. Before I walk into a room, people know that I'm coming in. Okay.
Right.
Because
your energy does. Yeah, your energy introduces you before your body. Exactly. For sure.
So when the first thing that people need to do is fix the fact that they're not a victim and realize that, and then start working on who you are. And then once you start working on that, then you'll start seeing your life get in order.
Exactly. Guys, Charles just said it in a nutshell. Because, we could get really deep with this and we could go on forever. But yeah, maybe we'll do another one. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And it was so awesome to have you on. I am so grateful for you today. I have to tell people that because it's just, I'm really grateful and you made this really easy because this was my very first interview. So anybody watching on here, he just made it so seamless and awesome. And he's just such a cool guy. Really cool. Really, as you've had such an incredible life, and now this is you're just putting the cherry on top. So that's awesome. It really is. It really is. So, but I don't want to keep you any longer. I know you're busy. I know you're working on stuff and whatever. But I think you and I should definitely talk again. Maybe we'll do another one when you come on and, maybe when you finish your next book or whatever. But this is a great topic. And, I would definitely like to, well, we'll talk. We'll talk to each other.
It's probably 3.5 months or so before The Rise of Hope is ready to be
submitted.
Available for purchase. So, we could talk later when it gets closer to kind of a launch date if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Definitely. We need to. And then by then, who knows? We'll see what's going on in the world. Maybe we'll have the rise of the humans, the collective, the conscious. There you go. Well, I just want to thank you very much for being on and being a guest and being my very first guest. You were amazing. And I hope you have an awesome weekend. And thanks everybody for tuning in and checking out Charles. Go read his books and get enlightened, get empowered, and keep following him and keep watching for the next one too. So we'll bring him on again.
Happy Father's Day to everybody.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Anybody who's a daddy or whatever, and whatever kind of dad you are. Happy Father's Day. Have a great weekend, everybody. And Charles, thank you again so much for being on. I really appreciate it. All right, I'll talk to you soon.